In the quiet town of Alba Iulia, nestled in the heart of Romania, a young girl named Anca tended to her garden. She was known for her gentle touch with the soil, her ability to coax life from even the most barren earth. The flowers grew in wild profusion, a stark contrast to the stoic monastery that loomed in the distance. Anca had heard whispers of the ancient abbey, of the silent nuns who lived behind its thick, ivy-covered walls. Their prayers, it was said, kept the town safe from the shadows that lurked beyond the edge of civilization. Her mother had always warned her to stay clear of the abbey, but the mystery had only drawn Anca closer. Each day, as she worked, her eyes would drift to the tall, narrow windows, where she sometimes caught a glimpse of a black-clad figure moving in the dim light. The nuns were a rare sight outside the monastery, their faces obscured by their habits, but Anca had a feeling that one of them watched her, a silent sentinel in the quiet world of the cloistered sisterhood. In Alba Iulia, Romania, a girl named Anca gardens near an old abbey, whose nuns are believed to protect the town. Anca notices a mysterious figure at the abbey's windows, sparking curiosity despite her mother's warnings. One evening, as the last rays of the sun painted the monastery in a soft golden light, Anca heard the distant toll of a bell. The sound sent a shiver down her spine. It was not the usual call to evening prayers. This was a single, mournful peal that echoed through the streets, hanging in the air like a portent of doom. The townsfolk looked at each other with furtive glances, as if afraid to speak fear aloud. Anca felt the first stirrings of unease, a feeling that grew as the bell's toll grew fainter, until it was swallowed by the silence. The following morning, the abbey's heavy wooden doors remained closed. The townsfolk gathered outside, murmuring in hushed tones. Anca watched from her window, her heart racing. Finally, a figure emerged, a priest with a face as pale as the marble statues that adorned the abbey's facade. He walked with a heavy gait, as if bearing the weight of a terrible secret. His eyes met her briefly, and she saw a flicker of pain that told her more than any words could. Something had changed in the sacred place she had always considered untouchable. Anca hears an unusual bell toll from the abbey, and the next day, a priest emerges with a troubled expression, hinting at a disturbance within the monastery's walls. The priest and a novitiate, a young woman with a solemn expression, arrived in the town square. The priest spoke in a grave tone, announcing that a sister of the abbey had taken her own life. The novitiate looked paler than the priest, her eyes wide and haunted. Anca felt a pang of fear, wondering if the nun she had seen in the window was the one who had met such a tragic end. The priest said that the Vatican had sent them to investigate, and that the abbey would remain sealed until their work was complete. As the days passed, Anca noticed changes in the town's demeanor. The whispers grew louder, the shadows deeper. Her once vibrant garden began to wilt, and the flowers she had so lovingly cared for drooped and died. The town's children spoke of seeing a spectral figure in the night, a black-clad figure with eyes like burning coals. Anca tried to dismiss the stories, telling herself that it was just the grief and fear taking hold of their imaginations. But deep down, she knew something was very wrong. A priest and novitiate come to town after a nun commits suicide, sent by the Vatican to investigate. The town's mood changes as supernatural occurrences, such as a ghostly figure and dying plants, begin to plague it. One night, unable to sleep, Anca made the fateful decision to approach the abbey. The moon cast an eerie glow upon the building, making it seem almost alive. She slipped through the shadows, her heart hammering in her chest, until she reached the wall. Peering through a small crack, she saw candlelight flickering in one of the windows. A shadow danced upon the stone, and she realized with horror that it was the nun she had seen before, moving with an unnatural grace. The sight of the figure, so alive yet so clearly of the dead, filled her with a cold dread that seemed to seep into her very bones. Her breath caught in her throat as the shadow grew larger, approaching the window. Anca watched in disbelief as the figure turned to face her, revealing the twisted visage of the demonic nun. The creature's eyes locked onto hers, and Anca felt a malevolent force reach out to her, threatening to consume her soul. The nun's lips curled into a grotesque smile, and she raised a bony hand, beckoning. Anca's fear turned to terror, and she stumbled backward, her heart pounding as she realized she had witnessed the unspeakable evil that had taken root in the sacred place she had once revered. With trembling hands, she made the sign of the cross and flowed into the night, her thoughts racing with the knowledge that she had stumbled upon a horror that threatened not only her, but the very fabric of her world. Anca spies on the abbey at night, discovering a demonic nun moving within, whose gaze fills her with dread. The creature's presence seems to affect the town's natural vitality. The priest and novitiate work tirelessly within the abbey's walls, their faith a bastion against the encroaching darkness. They interview the nuns, searching for answers amidst their tearful testimonies and prayers. But as they delved deeper, the whispers grew stronger, the shadows more insistent. They found ancient texts hinting at a dark secret, a pact made centuries ago to keep a malevolent force at bay. The priest's own haunted past seemed to mirror the abbey's troubled history, and the novitiate grew more and more unsettled by his unwavering resolve. The walls of the abbey seemed to whisper secrets that no human was meant to hear, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay and despair. As the days turned into nights, the priest began to exhibit signs of physical strain. His eyes were sunken, his voice hoarse from hours of reciting prayers and exorcisms. The novitiate, Sister Iulia, watched him with concern, her own faith wavering as she questioned the path she had chosen. Yet she pressed on, driven by a newfound resolve to protect the innocence of the town and to save her mentor from the abyss that yawned before them. In the depths of the abbey's library, she discovered a tome bound in human skin, its pages yellowed with age. The book spoke of a demonic nun, a creature of unspeakable malice that had been summoned and then imprisoned within the very walls they now inhabited. The priest and Sister Iulia investigate the abbey, finding disturbing evidence of a demonic nun and a dark pact. The priest's condition worsens while Sister Iulia's faith is tested, and she discovers a tome revealing the creature's origin and imprisonment. The priest, upon reading the grim revelation, knew what they had to do. They must confront the demon, to purge the abbey of the evil that had claimed the life of the young nun, and now sought to claim more. They gathered the holy relics and artifacts they had brought with them, arming themselves with the power of faith and the wisdom of the church. Anca watched from afar, her fear giving way to a strange fascination with the unfolding events. She knew she could not stand idly by while her town was consumed by darkness. With quiet determination, she made her way back to the abbey, her mind racing with thoughts of how she might help. As they approached the heart of the abbey, where the demonic nun was said to dwell, the air grew colder, the candles flickering with an otherworldly light. The priest's hand was steady as he held the crucifix aloft, his voice resonant as he recited the sacred incantations. Sister Iulia's eyes darted around the chamber, seeking any sign of the creature that had brought them to this moment. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and a piercing shriek echoed through the halls. The demonic nun emerged from the shadows, a twisted parody of the holy figure she once was, her eyes blazing with a hatred that seemed to burn the very air around her. The battle for the soul of the abbey had begun. Armed with faith and ancient knowledge, the priest and Sister Iulia confront the demonic nun at the abbey's core. Anca, driven by a sense of duty, returns to offer her assistance despite her fear. The creature reveals itself, initiating a battle between good and evil within the sacred space. The Vatican sends a priest and Sister Iulia to a Romanian abbey after a nun commits suicide. Anca witnesses a demonic nun within the abbey, causing town disturbances. The priest and Sister Iulia find evidence of a dark pact and a tome detailing the demon's origin and imprisonment. They confront the creature in the abbey's core, with Anca joining despite her fear. The priest and Sister Iulia stood their ground, their faith a beacon in the face of unimaginable terror. The demonic nun hissed and snarled, her form shifting and contorting in a display of unholy power. Anca, hidden in the shadows outside, watched with a mix of fear and awe as the priest began to exorcise the malevolent spirit. His words were a blend of Latin and ancient rites, a powerful counter to the creature's unearthly screams. The novitiate, her voice clear and strong, recited the prayers that had been passed down through generations of the faithful. The demonic nun grew more frenzied with each passing moment, her rage palpable. The priest felt his own strength waning, his body racked with pain as the demon fought back against the exorcism. Sister Iulia stepped forward, her eyes closed in concentration, and began to chant a prayer that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the abbey. The room grew brighter, the air charged with divine energy. Anca, unable to stay away, approached the door, drawn by the sound of Sister Iulia's pure voice. She could feel the power of the words washing over her, a warmth that seemed to banish the cold fear that had gripped her heart. The priest and Sister Iulia perform an exorcism as Anca watches from the shadows. Sister Iulia's pure voice amplifies their holy power, and the room fills with a divine light that challenges the demon's control over the abbey. The demonic nun's fury grew to a crescendo, her body writhing in agony as the holy words pierced her black soul. With one final desperate scream, she lunged at the priest, her clawed hands reaching for his throat. Anca watched in horror as Sister Iulia stepped into the fray, her own crucifix glowing with an intensity that seemed to sear the creature's very essence. The demon's grip loosened, and the priest staggered back, gasping for breath. The novitiate's voice grew louder, more insistent, and the demonic nun was forced to retreat, her form fading into the shadows. The room grew still, the only sound the harsh breathing of the two weary warriors of the church. Anca pushed open the door, her eyes wide with wonder and terror. She had never seen anything so terrifying, nor so beautiful. The priest, his eyes weary but determined, nodded to her. "You must leave," he whispered. "The darkness here is not for the innocent." Sister Iulia's gaze met hers, and Anca saw in her a strength that surpassed any she had ever known. The novitiate offered her a small, sad smile. "We will finish this," she promised. "But you must go." With trembling legs, Anca backed away, the words of the prayers echoing in her mind as she fled into the night. The battle was not over, but for now, the forces of light had held their ground. Anca witnesses the climax of the exorcism, with Sister Iulia's unwavering faith pushing the demon back. Despite the priest's weakened state, they continue the ritual. Sister Iulia, acknowledging Anca's presence, urges her to leave, recognizing the purity of her innocence amidst the ongoing spiritual conflict. The priest and Sister Iulia continued their exorcism, the air thick with the stench of sulfur and the cacophony of the demon's rage. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with a sinister life of their own, the paintings and tapestries twisting into macabre shapes that reflected the horror unfolding before them. The demonic nun reappeared, more powerful than ever, her eyes now a swirling vortex of shadow and malice. The priest's voice grew stronger, his words a sword that sliced through the darkness. Sister Iulia, her eyes shining with a fierce light, joined him in the sacred rite. The demonic nun threw back her head and screamed, the sound resonating through the abbey like the toll of a damned bell. The very foundations of the ancient building seemed to shake under the weight of their combined faith. The candles on the altar guttered and went out, plunging the room into a darkness so complete it felt as if it would swallow them whole. Yet the priest and the novitiate did not falter, their voices a beacon in the abyss. The demon's form grew more and more indistinct, until it was nothing more than a black mist, writhing in the confines of the sacred space. The priest and Sister Iulia persist in their exorcism, their faith unyielding. The demonic nun's power escalates, causing the abbey to tremble around them. Despite the intense darkness, their combined efforts manage to weaken the demon to a misty form, trapped by their sacred ritual. Finally, with one last desperate surge, the priest flung holy water at the creature, and it shrieked, recoiling. The mist grew thinner, the shadows retreating before the purifying power of the blessed liquid. The priest and Sister Iulia stepped closer, their crucifixes raised high, the light from the sacred symbols driving back the last vestiges of the demon. With a final, ear-splitting wail, the demonic nun disappeared, leaving behind a cold emptiness that seemed to cling to the very air. The two clerics collapsed to their knees, their strength spent. The priest looked up at Sister Iulia, his eyes filled with a newfound respect. "Your faith is strong," he murmured. "The church is fortunate to have you." Sister Iulia looked at him, her own eyes brimming with tears. "And you, Father," she said softly. "Without your guidance, I would have faltered." The days that followed were filled with healing and reflection. The abbey was cleansed, the nuns who had survived the ordeal comforted and counseled. The priest and Sister Iulia became the town's silent heroes, their names spoken in whispers of awe and gratitude. Anca's garden began to bloom once more, the dark pallor that had settled over the town lifted by the light of their victory. Yet there remained an underlying tension, a knowledge that the demonic nun had not been destroyed, merely banished. It was a secret they carried with them, a burden that would shape the rest of their lives. The priest and Sister Iulia successfully exorcised the demonic nun with holy water and their unwavering faith. The abbey and town began to heal, with the clerics gaining a newfound respect from the community. However, the underlying fear persists as they know the demon is only banished, not destroyed, leaving them with a lifelong burden. Anca assists the priest and Sister Iulia in the exorcism, which escalates into a powerful spiritual battle. Despite the priest's weakened state, they exorcise the demonic nun using faith and holy water, restoring peace to the town, but leaving them with the burden of the demon's potential return. The priest, his faith both shaken and reinforced by the experience, decided to stay in Alba Iulia, offering guidance to those who had suffered under the demon's influence. Sister Iulia, her novitiate completed, took her final vows, her commitment to the church stronger than ever. And Anca, her curiosity piqued by the events she had witnessed, found herself drawn to the abbey, seeking to understand the mysteries that had been revealed to her. She began to attend the Mass, her eyes never leaving the windows where the nuns prayed, her thoughts on the one who had once watched her from the shadows. But the demonic nun was not forgotten. Her presence lingered in the very fabric of the abbey, a reminder of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. And deep within the bowels of the ancient structure, in a chamber long sealed and forgotten, a shadow stirred. The creature was weakened but not vanquished. It waited, biding on its time, for the moment when it would be called forth again to claim the souls it had so long craved. The priest and Sister Iulia knew this, and they watched, ever vigilant, ready to face the horror that lay dormant, waiting for the night to fall once more upon the unsuspecting town. The priest remains in Alba Iulia to provide spiritual support. Sister Iulia takes her final vows, and Anca starts attending Mass. Despite the apparent victory, the demonic nun's presence lingers in the abbey. The clerics remain vigilant, knowing that the demon is only dormant, not destroyed, and could return to threaten the town. Anca, now a young woman, found herself drawn to the priest and Sister Iulia. She attended the abbey's services with a fervor that surprised even her mother, who had once worried that her curiosity would lead her astray. Yet the priest noticed something in her, a spark of defiance that mirrored the demonic nun's own rebellion. He took her under his wing, teaching her the ancient texts and the power of faith. She grew in wisdom and grace, her beauty a beacon that drew the eyes of many, but her heart remained steadfastly dedicated to the church. Years passed, and the whispers of the demonic nun grew faint. The townsfolk began to believe that the nightmare was truly over. The priest, now old and frail, watched over the abbey with a gentle but firm hand. Sister Iulia had become the Mother Superior, her leadership guiding the nuns through the quiet rhythms of monastic life. Yet in the deepest recesses of their hearts, they both knew that the demon was not truly gone. It was merely slumbering, waiting for the time when it could once again feed upon the fear and doubt of the faithful. One evening, as Anca sat in the quiet of the garden she had tended since her childhood, she felt a sudden chill. The air grew heavy, the flowers around her drooping as if in despair. A shadow fell across her, and she looked up to see the priest standing before her. His eyes filled with a grave concern. "It has begun," he said, his voice a mere whisper. "The demon stirs. We must prepare." Anca grows into a devout young woman under the priest's guidance. Despite the years of peace, the priest and Sister Iulia remain vigilant as they sense the demonic nun's presence is not entirely gone. One evening, Anca experiences an eerie foreboding as the priest confirms the demon's reawakening, prompting them to prepare for an imminent confrontation. The priest's words sent a shiver down Anca's spine, but she did not falter. She had grown into a strong and wise woman, and she knew what she must do. Together, they returned to the abbey, the candles flickering in the windows casting eerie shadows upon the ground. The priest gathered the nuns, his voice strong despite his age. "Our vigil has been long, but it is not over," he said. "The time has come for us to stand together, to face the evil that dwells within our walls, and cast it out once and for all." The nuns, their faces a mix of fear and determination, nodded solemnly. Sister Iulia stepped forward, her eyes shining with fierce resolve. "We will not let the demon win," she vowed. "Our faith is stronger than the darkness it brings." With renewed purpose, they set about fortifying the abbey, preparing for the final confrontation. Anca, now a novice herself, helped to strengthen the sacred barriers that had been weakened by time and neglect. The priest and Sister Iulia worked tirelessly, training the nuns in the rites of exorcism, sharing their knowledge and their experiences. Anca, now mature and dedicated, joins the priest and Sister Iulia in preparing the abbey for the demon's return. The priest addresses the nuns, reminding them of their duty to stand firm against the impending evil. Sister Iulia, as the Mother Superior, reinforces their resolve as they collectively bolster the abbey's defenses and train for the exorcism ahead. And so the stage was set for the final battle between the forces of light and the malevolent spirit that had haunted the abbey for so long. As the night grew darker and the whispers grew louder, Anca could feel the tension coiling within her, a tightness in her chest that made it difficult to breathe. She knew that the fate of the town, of the abbey, and perhaps even of her own soul rested upon her and her fellow sisters. Yet she was not afraid, for she had seen the power of faith, and she knew that together they could conquer even the darkest of demons. The priest and Sister Iulia moved through the abbey with a calm determination, placing ancient symbols at key points to bolster their defenses. The air grew colder, the candles casting flickering, jittery shadows on the stone walls. Anca followed in their wake, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. She had never felt more alive, more connected to the divine, than in this moment of impending peril. In the heart of the abbey, where the demonic nun had first made its presence known, they gathered. The priest's hand trembled slightly as he raised the sacred relics, his voice a thunderous roar as he began the final rites of exorcism. Sister Iulia's eyes burned with a holy fire, her voice a soothing counterpoint to the harsh incantations. The nuns formed a protective circle around them, their voices joining in a chorus of prayers that resonated through the very stones of the ancient building. The final confrontation approaches as Anca and the nuns bravely prepare. The priest and Sister Iulia strategically place protective symbols, while Anca feels a mix of fear and exhilaration. Gathered in the abbey's core, the priest initiates the exorcism with Sister Iulia's comforting prayers and the collective power of their faith. The ground trembled, the candles flared, and the air grew thick with the stench of brimstone. The demonic nun emerged from the shadows, its eyes blazing with a hatred that seemed to burn away the very fabric of reality. It hovered before them, a twisted parody of the holy figure it had once been, and Anca felt the weight of its malice pressing down upon her. But she did not flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, her own crucifix held high. The priest's eyes fell upon her, and for a moment she saw a flicker of doubt. But she met his gaze unflinchingly, and he nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. Together, the three of them faced the demon, their faith a beacon in the swirling darkness. The demon raged and spat, its form contorting into a nightmarish visage that seemed to reach out and touch the very limits of human sanity. But they did not waver. Anca felt the power of the priest's words wash over her, filling her with a strength she had never known. Sister Iulia's gentle guidance was a constant presence in her mind, a reminder of the light that awaited them if they could just hold on a little longer. And as the demon's form grew weaker, she knew that the time had come for her to act. With a cry of defiance, she stepped into the breach, her voice joining the priest's in a final, desperate plea to the heavens. The demon recoiled, its power waning before the combined might of their faith. The priest and Sister Iulia watched in amazement as Anca grew stronger, her eyes shining with a light that seemed to pierce the very heart of the creature. The demonic nun shrieked in fury, but its cries were drowned out by the deafening chorus of the nun's prayers. The room grew brighter, the shadows retreating before the onslaught of divine light. And then, with a final, desperate effort, the demon was gone. The air in the chamber was left thick with the scent of burnt flesh and ash. The candles sputtered out, leaving them in darkness. Anca collapsed to the ground, her body spent, her soul bruised but unbroken. The priest and Sister Iulia knelt beside her, their own exhaustion etched upon their faces. "You have done well, my child," the priest murmured, his voice weak, but filled with a profound sense of pride. "You have proven yourself a true warrior of the faith." Sister Iulia offered her a gentle smile, her eyes filled with newfound respect. "Welcome, Sister Anca," she said softly. "You have found your place in the world." Together, the trio emerged from the abbey, the first light of dawn breaking over the town. The townsfolk, who had gathered outside in a silent vigil, watched in awe as the nun stepped forth, unblemished by the battle that had raged within. The priest raised his hand in blessing, and the people fell to their knees, their voices raised in a hymn of thanksgiving. The demon was gone, but the memory of its malevolence remained, yet in the hearts of those who had faced it and survived. There was a newfound belief in the power of good. They knew that darkness would always exist, that evil would never truly be vanquished. But they also knew that together, they could stand against it, their faith a bastion of light in a world that often seemed to be shrouded in shadows. The priest, his strength renewed by the victory, turned to Anca. "Your path is clear now," he said, his eyes shining with an inner light. "You have been chosen to carry on our work, to protect the innocent from the forces of the unholy." Anca looked up at him, her eyes filled with a newfound purpose. "I am ready," she said, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. Sister Iulia placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We will guide you," she promised, "for you are not alone. The church is with you, and we are its shield." The abbey's walls stood tall once more, a symbol of hope and protection in the town of Alba Iulia. The nuns returned to their silent prayers, their souls fortified by the knowledge that they had played a part in the battle for salvation. Anca, now fully embracing her role as a sister of the church, felt a deep sense of belonging, a bond with her fellow nuns that transcended mere friendship. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the townsfolk slowly returned to their daily lives. The whispers of the demonic nun grew fainter, the fear of her presence a distant memory. Anca continued her studies, her mind now focused on the sacred texts that had been her salvation in the darkest of moments. Her garden bloomed once more, a testament to her faith and her unyielding spirit. But in the quiet of the night, when the abbey was still, she would sometimes catch a glimpse of a shadow flitting past her window. A chill would run down her spine, and she would remember the promise she had made. The demon had not been destroyed, only banished. And so, she knew that one day, she would be called upon again to stand against the darkness that lurked just beyond the light. Yet she did not fear, for she had seen the power of faith, the strength of the divine, and the unyielding resolve of those who had faced the abyss and lived to tell the tale. With the priest's guidance and Sister Iulia's wisdom, she grew stronger, her faith a beacon that pierced the night. And when that day came, she would be ready. The priest watched her from the shadows, his eyes filled with a quiet satisfaction. He had seen her potential from the beginning, had recognized the flame of courage that burned within her. Now, it was up to her to carry the torch, to be the light in the darkness that threatened to engulf the world. In the quiet of his chambers, he penned a letter to the Vatican, detailing the events that had unfolded in the small Romanian town. He knew that others would come to hear of the demonic nun, that they would seek to understand the nature of the evil that had been unleashed. But he also knew that the true story was one of faith and redemption, of the unbreakable bonds forged in the face of terror. As he sealed the envelope, he offered a silent prayer for the souls of those who had been lost, and for the strength of those who remained. For the battle was never truly over. The war against the forces of darkness, an eternal struggle that raged across the ages. But in Alba Iulia, a spark of hope had been rekindled, a reminder that even in the most desolate of places, light could be found. And as the sun rose over the abbey, the priest and sisters Anca and Iulia stood together, their eyes on the horizon, ready to face whatever the future held. The story of the demonic nun became a legend, whispered in hushed tones within the church. It was a tale of caution and inspiration, a reminder that faith could conquer fear, that love could vanquish hate. And though the priest and Sister Iulia never sought recognition, their deeds were not forgotten. They became the guardians of a sacred trust, the protectors of a secret that only a few knew. Anca, now Sister Anca, grew in wisdom and grace, her beauty now a reflection of her inner strength. Her garden continued to bloom, a symbol of the life that persisted even in the most unlikely of places. The townsfolk watched her with a mixture of awe and reverence, knowing that she had stared into the face of evil and emerged unscathed. Yet she remained humble, her eyes always seeking the priest's guidance and Sister Iulia's approval. The priest, feeling the weight of his years, knew that the time was approaching when he would have to pass on the mantle of protection to Sister Anca. He saw in her the same fiery determination that had once driven him to confront the demonic nun, and he knew that she would be equal to the task, with Sister Iulia's help. They continued to train the younger nuns, preparing them for the battles that they knew would come. One night, as Sister Anca was walking the abbey's corridors in silent contemplation, she heard the faintest whisper of a lullaby. It was a tune she had not heard since her mother had sung it to her as a child, and it filled her with a sudden, inexplicable dread. The air grew colder, and the shadows grew longer, reaching out to her like the skeletal fingers of the dead. She quickened her pace, the soft echo of the melody following her like a mournful ghost. The priest and Sister Iulia, sensing the disturbance in the abbey's sacred space, rushed to her side. Together, they entered the chamber where the demonic nun had once made its lair. The room was now a place of healing and contemplation, but the darkness that had once dwelt there still lingered, a palpable presence that seemed to thicken the air. The priest took out his crucifix, his hand trembling slightly. Sister Iulia began to chant a prayer of protection, her voice a beacon in the suffocating gloom. The lullaby grew louder, the shadows coalescing into a form that seemed to mock the very essence of the nun's habit. The demonic nun had returned, its eyes burning with a hatred that had not been extinguished by their previous battle. It hovered before them, its twisted smile a mockery of the peaceful countenance of a holy sister. Sister Anca felt the weight of her new responsibility settle upon her shoulders, and she stepped forward, her own crucifix raised high. The priest's voice grew stronger, his exorcism a declaration of war against the forces of darkness. Sister Iulia's eyes never left the demon, her own faith a bastion that could not be breached. The air grew colder still, the very stones of the abbey seeming to tremble with the power of their incantations. The demonic nun shrieked in fury, its form growing more and more monstrous as it fought against the sacred words. But Sister Anca's voice was clear and true, her faith a sword that sliced through the shadows. The demon recoiled, its eyes narrowing in rage. It knew that it had underestimated her, that she was not just a novice but a warrior, forged in the fires of the church's most sacred rites. The priest watched her with a mix of pride and fear, knowing that she had been born for this moment. The battle raged, the abbey's walls echoing with the cacophony of prayers and the demon's rage. Yet, Sister Anca did not falter. She had faced the darkness before and emerged stronger for it. With a final, piercing scream, the demon was driven back into the abyss from whence it came, the lullaby fading into silence. The room was left bathed in the soft glow of the candles, the air filled with the sweet scent of incense. The priest and Sister Iulia embraced her, their eyes filled with relief and admiration. "You are indeed the light we needed," the priest murmured, his voice cracking with emotion. "Together, we will stand against the night, and together, we will protect the innocent." Sister Anca nodded, her eyes never leaving the spot where the demon had once stood. "I am ready," she said, her voice firm and unyielding. "For I am not just Sister Anca, but a soldier of the church." The priest and Sister Iulia shared a knowing look. They knew that she had been chosen for a purpose far greater than any of them could have imagined. The priest placed his hand upon her head, his eyes shining with a gentle light. "May God's grace be upon you," he whispered, "and may the angels guide your steps." The months passed, and the abbey returned to a semblance of normalcy. Yet the shadow of the demonic nun remained, a constant reminder of the battle that had been fought and won. Sister Anca continued her studies, her mind now focused on the ancient texts that spoke of demons and exorcisms. Her garden grew lusher than ever before, a sanctuary in the midst of the cloistered world she now called home. But the whispers grew, fainted at first, but steadily increasing in volume. The priest and Sister Iulia noticed the subtle changes in the air, the way the shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the candles burned a little less brightly. They knew that the demon had not been destroyed, merely banished, and it was only a matter of time before it would seek to return, to claim the souls it had been denied. One evening, as the sun set over the Romanian countryside, casting long shadows across the abbey, Sister Anca felt a cold hand upon her shoulder. She turned to find the priest standing there, his face etched with concern. "It is time," he said gravely. "The demon has found a way back into our world." Her heart racing, Sister Anca followed the priest to the chamber of the exorcism. The room was as it had been, the air still heavy with the memory of the battle. The priest opened the ancient tome that had guided them before, the pages crackling with an unseen energy. Sister Iulia stood beside them, her crucifix gleaming in the fading light. Together, they began the rites that would seal the demon away once more. The air grew colder, the shadows more oppressive, and the whispers grew into a cacophony that seemed to shake the very foundations of the abbey. Yet they did not waver, their voices a symphony of faith that cut through the darkness. As they reached the climax of the ritual, the demonic nun appeared, more terrifying than ever before. Its eyes burned with a hatred that seemed to scorch the very air, its form a twisted mockery of the sacred vestments it had once worn. The priest's hand trembled, but Sister Anca's was steady, her voice a beacon in the storm. The demon lunged for them, its claws extended, its mouth open in a silent scream. Sister Anca stepped forward, her crucifix a shield before her. The priest's exorcism grew stronger, the words a hammer that shattered the creature's resolve. Sister Iulia's prayers surrounded them like a warm embrace, a bastion of light against the encroaching shadows. The demon recoiled, its form flickering like a candle in a gale. Sister Anca could feel the power of their faith coalescing around her, filling her with a strength she had never known. The priest's incantation reached a crescendo, and the demon was driven back into the void, its screams echoing through the halls like the wail of a lost soul. As the light of the candles grew stronger and the air warmed, the priest collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Sister Iulia rushed to his side, her own strength waning. Sister Anca looked at them, her eyes filled with a newfound determination. "I will protect you," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I will not let it return." The priest managed a weak smile, his eyes shining with pride. "Your faith is a beacon," he murmured. "Do not let it falter." The three of them knelt in the chamber, their heads bowed in silent prayer. They knew that the battle was never truly over, that the demon would always seek a way back into their world. But they also knew that as long as they had faith, they could stand against the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. And so, the cycle continued, the guardians of the abbey ever vigilant, their hearts and souls bound together by the sacred trust they had been given. Sister Anca's role grew more significant with each passing day, her faith and courage, the bulwark against the malevolent whispers that sought to corrupt the innocent. The priest watched her with a mix of admiration and trepidation, knowing that the battle was far from over and that she would bear the brunt of the war to come. The town of Alba Iulia remained blissfully unaware of the supernatural struggle unfolding within the abbey's ancient stones. They saw only the gentle, ever-present nuns, a constant reminder of the divine protection that had been theirs for generations. Yet Sister Anca felt the weight of her mission pressing down on her shoulders, a burden that grew heavier with each passing moon. One fateful evening, as the bells tolled the curfew, Sister Anca was drawn to the library. The air grew thick with a sense of foreboding, the dusty tomes seeming to tremble on their shelves. There in the dim candlelight, she found a parchment hidden in the hollowed-out pages of a holy book, a map to the demon's prison deep within the abbey's catacombs. Her heart racing, she took the map and hurried to the priest and Sister Iulia. They studied it in silence, the gravity of their situation etched upon their faces. The demon had found a new weapon, a way to corrupt the very foundation of their sanctuary. They knew they had to act swiftly, for the walls between the mortal realm and the abyss were growing dangerously thin. The descent into the catacombs was a journey into the bowels of the earth, the thick air with the scent of decay and the cries of the lost souls that had been buried there. The priest led the way, his cross held high, the light from its gem casting eerie shadows upon the damp stones. Sister Iulia followed closely, her rosary clutched tightly in her trembling hand, and Sister Anca brought up the rear, the map fluttering in the dank breeze. They arrived at the chamber where the demon was said to be imprisoned, the air around them crackling with dark energy. The priest's eyes grew wide with horror as he recognized the runes etched into the stone, an ancient language that spoke of bargains with the unholy and the unspeakable rituals that had been performed to contain the creature. Sister Anca stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the pulsing, shadowy figure that was the demonic nun. The priest and Sister Iulia flanked her, their faith a tangible force that seemed to bolster her own. Together, they began the sacred rites that would reseal the demon's prison, their voices echoing through the ancient halls like a call to arms for the angels themselves. The demon roared in fury, its form swirling and distorting as it fought against the power of their exorcism. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with malice, the very earth trembling beneath their feet. But the three clerics held firm, their belief in the divine unshakable, as the final words of the incantation left their lips. The demon let out a piercing shriek that seemed to shake the very fabric of reality. The chamber was bathed in a blinding light, and when it receded, the demonic nun was gone, the seal on its prison restored. Sister Anca fell to her knees, her body racked with the effort, but her spirit unbroken. The priest and Sister Iulia helped her to her feet, their expressions a mix of relief and grim determination. They knew that this was not the end. but merely a pause in the eternal battle between light and darkness. Yet in that moment, they felt a kinship stronger than any they had ever known, a bond forged in the fires of their faith and the crucible of their shared fears. Together, they ascended the stairs, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. The abbey waited, its ancient stones holding the secrets of countless battles against the unholy. But for now, it was quiet. The demons' whispers silenced. The town continued to sleep, oblivious to the nightmare that had once again been banished. Sister Anca walked through the garden, the moon casting a silver glow upon the dew-kissed leaves. The scent of lavender filled the air, a gentle balm to her frazzled nerves. She knew that the demonic nun's influence had not disappeared entirely, but for now, peace had been restored. The priest and Sister Iulia remained in their quarters, discussing the implications of the demon's return. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices a stark contrast to the quiet of the night. Anca could hear the concern in their words, the unspoken fear of what might come next. Yet she felt a strange sense of calm, a knowing that she had been chosen for this path. The following days were filled with tension as the trio anticipated the demon's next move. They worked tirelessly, reinforcing the abbey's protective barriers, praying over every stone and corner. The priest, his eyes haunted by the memories of battles past, taught Sister Anca ancient exorcism rites that had been long forgotten. Sister Iulia, her faith unshaken, offered guidance and support, her own experiences with the demon a testament to her resilience. One night, as Anca patrolled the abbey, she heard the soft whispers of the demonic nun. They grew louder, more insistent, until she could almost feel its breath upon her neck. She hurried to the priest and Sister Iulia, her heart racing with the urgency of the situation. They knew they could not wait for the demon to attack again. They had to find a way to destroy it once and for all. The priest searched the abbey's archives for any information that could lead to the demon's destruction. Sister Iulia prayed for divine guidance, her eyes never leaving the flickering candle flame. Anca tended to her garden, her thoughts on the innocents they had sworn to protect. It was here, surrounded by the quiet strength of nature, that she found her answer. A plant, rare and sacred, grew in a hidden corner of the abbey's cemetery, said to have the power to purify even the darkest of spirits. The priest, upon hearing of this discovery, nodded gravely. "We must act quickly," he said, his eyes alight with a new determination. "We shall craft a holy artifact from its essence, one that can exorcise the demon from this plane forever." The preparation of the artifact was a delicate and sacred process. Under the priest's guidance, Sister Anca harvested the plant, her hands shaking with the weight of the task. Sister Iulia assisted, her prayers a constant backdrop to their work. The scent of the crushed petals filled the air, a sweet yet bitter aroma that spoke of redemption and sacrifice. Once the artifact was complete, they descended into the catacombs, their hearts heavy with the gravity of their mission. The demonic nun waited for them, its eyes burning with a cold fury. The priest began the exorcism, his voice a thunderous command that echoed through the chamber. Sister Iulia's prayers wove a net of protection around them, a silver thread that seemed to glisten in the candlelight. Anca stepped forward, the holy artifact in hand. She could feel the power of the plant surging through her, filling her with a fierce determination that was not her own. The demonic nun recoiled, its form wavering as it faced the purifying light of the artifact. With a final, desperate scream, it was drawn into the object, the darkness within it screaming in rage. The priest and Sister Iulia watched in amazement as the artifact glowed brighter and brighter, the demon's screams becoming fainter until there was nothing but silence. The priest took the artifact from Anca's trembling hands, his eyes filled with a newfound hope. "We have done it," he murmured. "We have sent it back to the abyss." The three of them emerged from the catacombs, their steps lighter than they had been in weeks. The air in the abbey was cleaner, the shadows less malevolent. They knew that the demon's influence had been weakened, but they also knew that it had not been vanquished. It was a victory, but one that would be tested time and again. The priest looked at Sister Anca with a mix of pride and concern. "You are truly the light we needed," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "But do not forget, the darkness is ever present. We must remain vigilant." Sister Anca nodded solemnly, the weight of her newfound responsibility settling heavily upon her. The priest continued, his eyes searching hers for understanding. "The path ahead is fraught with danger, and the temptations of the demon will be great. But remember, your faith is your shield, and your courage is your sword." In the weeks that followed, the town of Alba Iulia returned to a semblance of normalcy. Yet, the priest, Sister Iulia, and Sister Anca knew that their battle was far from over. They worked tirelessly to fortify the abbey's defenses, conducting exorcisms and praying for the souls still trapped in the demon's grasp. The priest's health began to decline, the strain of the continuous battles etching lines of weariness upon his once youthful face. One evening, as the moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the abbey, Sister Anca felt a disturbance in the air. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and she knew the demonic nun was plotting its return. She rushed to the priest, her heart racing with fear. "Father," she panted, "it is not over." The priest, though weak, nodded solemnly. "We knew it would not be," he said, his voice a mere whisper. "The demon is cunning, and it will not rest until it has claimed us all." Sister Iulia, ever the pillar of strength, placed a comforting hand on Anca's shoulder. "We will face it together," she assured her. "Our faith is unshakable." The three of them gathered in the chapel, the holy artifact a silent sentinel on the altar before them. They prayed through the night, their voices a chorus that filled the space with a divine light that seemed to push back the encroaching shadows. As dawn approached, the whispers grew fainter, retreating once more into the recesses of the abbey. The priest, his strength waning, turned to Sister Anca. "You are ready," he said with a firm nod. "You must carry on our work, protect the innocent, and never let the light of the Lord be extinguished from this place." Sister Anca felt the burden of his words, but she also felt a surge of resolve. She was no longer just a novice, she was a warrior of the church, chosen to stand against the encroaching darkness. "I will not fail you," she vowed, her voice strong and clear. The priest's eyes grew distant as he gazed upon her. "You have already proven your worth," he murmured. "Now it is time for you to take up the mantle." And with that he passed away, his spirit joining the heavenly host in the eternal battle against the forces of evil. Sister Iulia wept for the loss of her mentor, but Sister Anca felt a strange calmness wash over her. She knew that she had been prepared for this moment, that her path had led her here for a reason. The following days saw Sister Anca taking on more responsibilities within the abbey. She counseled the nuns, guiding them through their fears and doubts, and she continued her studies with a newfound intensity. The priest's passing had left a void, but it had also lit a fire within her that could not be quenched. One night, as she walked the hallowed halls, the whispers grew loud once more. The demonic nun had returned, its malevolent gaze fixed upon her. Sister Anca felt a cold dread coil around her heart, but she did not flee. Instead, she raised the holy artifact, her voice ringing out with the power of the exorcism she had learned from the priest. The demon recoiled, its form writhing in agony. Sister Iulia joined her prayers a symphony of faith that seemed to resonate through the very stones of the abbey. Together, they faced the creature, their hearts united in the fight against the unholy. The battle raged, the air crackling with the power of their rites. The demonic nun grew more powerful, drawing strength from the shadows that clung to the corners of the abbey. But Sister Anca and Sister Iulia stood firm, their faith unwavering. The moment the first rays of dawn pierced the stained glass windows, the demon's hold weakened. Sister Anca, feeling the surge of holy power, stepped closer to the snarling creature. The artifact in her hand blazed like a star, casting the demon's shadow aside. "In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti," she intoned, her voice unwavering. The demonic nun hissed and spat, its eyes narrowing to slits of pure malice. It threw itself at the two nuns, but they stood their ground. Sister Anca thrust the artifact forward, and a blinding flash of light erupted from it, enveloping the demon. The creature shrieked, its form convulsing as it was forced back into the abyss from which it came. The chapel trembled, the very air around them crackling with the energy of the exorcism. When the light receded, the demonic nun was gone, and with it, the heavy weight of darkness that had suffocated the abbey. Sister Iulia collapsed into a heap, her face a mask of exhaustion. Sister Anca caught her, her own legs trembling with the effort of the battle. They held on to each other, their hearts pounding in their chests. Days turned into weeks, and the abbey slowly returned to its peaceful routine. The nuns went about their duties with a newfound sense of purpose, and the town of Alba Iulia began to flourish once more. Sister Anca took on the role of the priest's successor, her youthful energy infusing the ancient walls with new life. The priest's passing had left a void, but his legacy lived on in the hearts of those he had trained and protected. Yet the memory of the demonic nun remained, a stark reminder of the evil that lurked just beyond the veil. Sister Anca knew that she had been chosen to stand as a sentinel against the darkness, and she embraced her role with a fervor that surprised even herself. She continued her studies, delving deeper into the arcane lore of exorcism and demonology, determined to be ready for the inevitable day when the demon would return. In her quiet moments, she would sit in the garden, the very same spot where she had first felt the demon's presence. The plants now grew strong and vibrant, a testament to the light that had been restored. She prayed for guidance, for the strength to face the future, and for the souls that had been lost to the demon's embrace. Her eyes would drift to the abbey windows, searching the shadows for any sign of movement, but she knew that the real battle was not one of sight, but of faith. One evening, as the sun set and the shadows grew long, Sister Anca felt the familiar chill creep over her. She stood, her heart racing, and made her way to the chapel. Sister Iulia, her face etched with lines of worry, waited for her, a candle in her hand. "It is not over," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The two nuns looked at each other, understanding passing between them. They had sent the demon back, but it was not defeated. It was merely biding its time, waiting for the moment when their guard would falter. The priest's words echoed in their minds. "Our faith is our shield, and our courage is our sword." They knelt before the altar, the holy artifact placed between them, and began to pray. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows upon the walls. But the light they brought was one of hope and determination. Together, they vowed to protect the town and the souls within it, to stand against the tide of evil that sought to consume them all. And in the quiet of the night, somewhere deep within the abbey, the demonic nun stirred, sensing the unyielding faith that burned like a beacon. It knew that it had not seen the last of Sister Anca and Sister Iulia. The battle was far from over, but for now, the light had prevailed. The cycle of darkness and light continued, a dance as old as time, but the two nuns had sworn an oath that would not be easily broken. The townspeople, blissfully unaware of the eternal struggle happening in their midst, went about their lives. They saw Sister Anca and Sister Iulia as guardians, the priest's successors who had brought peace back to their town. They offered their thanks and prayers, unknowing that the true battle was still unfolding. As Sister Anca grew in her new role, she became a beacon of hope and guidance. Her youthful exuberance and unshakable faith drew many to the abbey, seeking solace from the shadows that whispered in the corners of their minds. Her sermons were not just words, but living embodiments of the divine love that she had experienced in her own darkest moments. Meanwhile, Sister Iulia, now an elderly woman whose eyes had seen more than most could imagine, continued her work behind the scenes. Her wisdom and experience were invaluable as she trained the newest generation of nuns in the ancient rites that had protected the abbey for centuries. Her faith had not wavered, and she knew that the time would come when they would need to be ready. The years passed, and the whispers grew faint. The abbey's walls stood strong, the holy light within unblemished by the demon's touch. Yet, the two nuns knew that the creature was not truly gone. It was a patient beast, waiting for the moment of weakness when it could strike again. They continued their vigil, their prayers a constant reminder that the battle was never truly won, only held at bay. One stormy night, the skies above Alba Iulia cracked with lightning, the thunder a mournful drumbeat that seemed to echo the demon's displeasure. Sister Anca, now a seasoned exorcist in her own right, felt the malevolent presence growing stronger. She roused Sister Iulia, their eyes meeting in the flickering candlelight. Without a word, they knew the time had come. They gathered the sacred artifacts and descended into the catacombs, ready to face the demonic nun once more. The air grew thick with malice, the shadows coalescing into a living, breathing entity that reached for them with skeletal hands. But the nuns did not flinch. Their faith blazed like a bonfire, driving back the encroaching darkness. They recited the ancient incantations, their voices a duet of power and purity that resonated through the ancient stones. The demonic nun emerged from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with a hunger that had not been sated. The priest's words echoed through Sister Anca's mind. Your faith is your shield, your courage your sword. With the holy artifact held aloft, she stepped forward, Sister Iulia at her side, their prayers a symphony that seemed to shake the very foundations of the abbey. The demon threw itself at them, a maelstrom of rage and despair. But the nuns stood firm, their faith a fortress against the onslaught. The artifact in Sister Anca's hand grew brighter, the light piercing the demon's black heart. With a final, agonized scream, the creature was banished once more, its essence scattered on the winds of the night. The catacombs grew still, the echo of their prayers lingering like a benediction. Sister Anca and Sister Iulia, their faces etched with exhaustion, but their spirits unbroken, made their way back to the chapel. They knew that the demon's defeat was only temporary, that the cycle would continue until the end of days. But for now, the town slept peacefully, the abbey a bastion of light in a world of shadows. The priest's legacy lived on in their hearts, a reminder of the price of vigilance. As they tended to the abbey and the souls within its walls, they prepared for the next battle, for they knew that the demonic nun would return. Yet in their hearts, there was a quiet strength, a bond forged in the fires of their shared trials. They were the guardians of the light, and together they would face whatever darkness lay ahead. One evening, as Sister Anca was walking the hallowed halls, she heard the faintest of whispers, her heart racing. She knew the demon was attempting to breach their defenses once more. She roused Sister Iulia, and together they descended into the catacombs, their steps echoing through the ancient corridors. The air grew thick with malice, the very walls seeming to close in around them. The demonic nun waited in the shadows, its eyes gleaming with a malicious intelligence. Sister Anca felt a cold chill run down her spine, but she raised the holy artifact, her voice steady as she began the rites of exorcism. Sister Iulia stood firm beside her, her prayers a shield against the creature's taunts. The demon hissed and writhed, its power growing as it fed on their fear. But the nun's faith was a bastion that could not be breached. With every word of the sacred incantation, the demon's hold grew weaker. The air in the chamber grew brighter, the shadows retreating before the power of their united faith. The demonic nun screamed, its form contorting in a final desperate attempt to maintain its foothold. Yet it was no match for the purity of their belief, the light of their souls burning brighter than the darkest of nights. The creature was sent back to the abyss with a thunderous roar, the very earth shaking with the force of its departure. The nuns emerged from the catacombs, their robes damp with sweat, their eyes reflecting the unspoken understanding that their battles were far from over. But in the quiet of the night, as they watched over the town from the abbey's tower, they knew that they had each other, and with their faith, they could face whatever the shadows had in store. The whispers grew faint once more, but they never disappeared entirely. The priest's warning was a constant echo in their minds, a reminder to stay vigilant. The town of Alba Iulia continued to thrive, its people oblivious to the eternal struggle taking place within the abbey walls. Yet Sister Anca and Sister Iulia knew that their work was never done. They watched, they prayed, and they waited, ready to face the demonic nun when it returned. And as the years passed, they grew stronger, their bond unbroken by the weight of their duty. Sister Anca's knowledge of the sacred texts grew, her understanding of the demonic deepening with each victory and each defeat. Sister Iulia, now frail and wise, passed on her knowledge to the younger nuns, ensuring that the flame of their faith would never be extinguished. The town grew and changed, but the abbey remained a bastion of hope and light. The priest's spirit watched over them, guiding their steps, whispering the wisdom of ages passed into their ears. The demonic nun was not forgotten, but it was held at bay, its whispers a fading echo in the hearts of those who had faced it and lived. But the cycle was inescapable. As the moon waxed and waned, so too did the demon's power. And on the stormiest of nights, when the shadows grew thickest, the whispers grew louder, a promise of the battles yet to come. Sister Anca, now the abbey's leader, felt the burden of her role more heavily than ever, but she did not waver. She knew that she was part of a lineage that stretched back through the annals of time, a lineage of warriors who had faced the darkness and emerged unbroken. With each new moon, she and Sister Iulia would gather the nuns, their candles a beacon in the night. They would pray for the strength to continue the fight, for the souls lost to the demon's embrace, and for the salvation of all who walked the earth. And as the storms raged outside, within the abbey, the flame of faith burned bright, a constant reminder that light would always prevail against the darkness. The demonic nun was a specter that haunted their dreams, a shadow that flitted at the edge of their vision. Yet with each dawn that broke over the town, the nuns knew that they had held the line. The priest's words had become a mantra, a promise that they would not rest until the demon was vanquished from their midst. One fateful night, as the moon blood red in the sky, the demonic nun made its most powerful bid for freedom. The walls of the abbey trembled as it howled in rage, the very air seeming to thicken with its malicious intent. Sister Anca and Sister Iulia, now ancient in their wisdom, stood in the chapel, their crucifixes raised in unison. The younger nuns huddled around them, their eyes wide with terror yet filled with a determination that mirrored their mentors. The confrontation was brutal, the demon's power unleashed in a maelstrom of fury that tested the very limits of their faith. The chapel was a battleground of light and dark, the air charged with the electricity of sacred and profane forces clashing. Sister Anca felt the weight of her years, her body aching from the effort. But she pushed on, her voice a clarion call to the heavens. Suddenly, the demon's form grew still, its eyes locking onto Sister Anca with a hunger that transcended the physical realm. It spoke, its voice a cacophony of whispers that seemed to come from every corner of the room. "Your faith will be your downfall," it hissed, a promise that sent a cold shiver down her spine. Yet she remained steadfast, her faith a sword that cleaved through the shadows. Sister Iulia, her voice quivering with age, but not with fear, recited an incantation that had been lost to time. The chapel was bathed in a light so brilliant that it seemed to burn away the very fabric of the demon's being. Sister Anca felt a surge of power, the strength of countless souls lending her their might. With a final, desperate cry, she thrust the holy artifact at the creature, and the demonic nun was consumed by the light, its screams echoing into silence. The chapel was still, the candles guttering as if in relief. Sister Anca and Sister Iulia, their bodies spent, collapsed to the floor. The younger nuns rushed to their sides, tears of joy and relief mixing with their prayers of thanksgiving. The town of Alba Iulia, having felt the tremors of the spiritual war, emerged from their homes to find the abbey bathed in a light that seemed to chase away the very shadows of the night. In the aftermath, the two nuns knew that the demon's final defeat had come at a great cost. Sister Iulia's time had come, her spirit worn thin by the endless battles. She passed away peacefully in her sleep, her final moments surrounded by the sisters she had devoted her life to protecting. Sister Anca, now alone in her vigil, felt the weight of her duty more heavily than ever before, but she was not truly alone. The priest's spirit remained, a silent guardian who offered her comfort and guidance. And the town, now aware of the abbey's true purpose, had become her family, her reason for fighting. The demonic nun was gone, but the whispers remained, a reminder of the darkness that lay just beyond the light. Sister Anca took up the mantle of her mentor, her eyes now filled with the same fiery determination that had driven the priest and Sister Iulia before her. She knew that she would face many battles in the years to come, but she was ready. For she had seen the power of faith, and she knew that it was a weapon that no demon could ever truly conquer. The story of the demonic nun became a legend, whispered among the nuns and the townsfolk. Each new generation heard the tale, and each was inspired anew to hold fast to their beliefs. The abbey grew, its walls a bastion of hope and sanctuary for all who sought refuge from the shadows. Sister Anca continued her vigil, her faith unshaken by the trials she had endured. And as she grew old and frail, the whispers grew fainter, the battles less frequent. Yet she never ceased her prayers, her eyes never leaving the windows, ever watchful for the return of the malevolent force that had once sought to claim her soul. The years turned into decades and the cycle continued, the abbey's light a beacon in the eternal struggle between good and evil. But through it all, Sister Anca remained, the priest's legacy living on in her unyielding spirit. The town had grown and changed around them, the whispers of the demonic nun now a mere echo in the annals of Alba Iulia's history. Yet the abbey remained steadfast, a bastion of faith that had weathered the storms of time. As Sister Anca grew old, her eyes never lost their vigilant gleam. The nuns under her care had become her daughters in faith, each one a testament to the strength and courage she had instilled in them. The sacred texts that had once been her guide now held secrets that only she could unravel, her understanding of the demonic deepening with each passing year. One day, as the sun set and the shadows grew long, a young girl named Clara found her way to the abbey's doors. Her eyes held a haunted look, her soul weary from battles unseen. Sister Anca took her in, recognizing the same spark that had once burned within her. Clara had a gift, a sensitivity to the spiritual realm that marked her as a potential target for the demon's whispers. Under Sister Anca's tutelage, Clara grew into a strong and devout young woman. Together, they prayed, they studied, and they prepared for the inevitable day when the demonic nun would stir again. The bond between them grew, a silent understanding that they shared a sacred duty to protect the town and the souls that called it home. And then, on a night when the moon was obscured by a veil of clouds, the whispers grew loud once more. Sister Anca felt the familiar chill in her bones, the weight of the impending battle heavy upon her heart. She called Clara to her side, her voice a soft but firm command. "The time has come," she said, her eyes shining with a fierce determination that belied her age. "We must stand together as one and face what lies in the shadows." Clara nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she took up the sacred artifact that had been passed down through generations. Together, they descended into the catacombs, their footsteps echoing through the hallowed halls. The air grew thick with malice, the shadows seemingly reaching out to embrace them. But they pushed on, their faith a blazing torch that pierced the darkness. In the heart of the abbey, where the demonic nun had once made its lair, they found the creature waiting for them. Its eyes gleamed with a hatred that seemed to burn with the fires of hell itself. But Sister Anca was ready. With Clara by her side, she recited the ancient incantations that had been taught to her by the priest and Sister Iulia, her voice a testament to the unyielding power of faith. The demon threw itself at them, a tempest of rage and despair. But the nuns stood firm, their prayers a symphony that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. Sister Anca felt the strength of her sisters, both living and dead, lending her their power. their faith a shield against the creature's malice. The battle was fierce, the air crackling with the energy of good and evil colliding. Clara's faith never wavered, her eyes never leaving Sister Anca's as she lent her voice to the exorcism. And as the demonic nun's power grew weaker, Sister Anca knew that the moment of truth had arrived. With a final, desperate push, she thrust the artifact into the creature's heart, the light from it consuming the shadowy form. The catacombs grew still, the echoes of their prayers the only sound that remained. Sister Anca turned to Clara, her eyes filled with a quiet pride. "You are ready," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the sacred silence. "When the time comes, you will be the light that guides us through the darkness." And with those words, she passed the mantle to the younger nun, her hand trembling as she placed the artifact into Clara's firm grip. The cycle of darkness and light continued, but now it was Clara's turn to stand watch, to be the guardian of the flame that had been kindled within her by the priest and Sister Iulia. The town slept peacefully, the abbey's walls a silent sentinel against the shadows of the night. Sister Clara, her heart now burdened with the weight of her new role, took her place beside Sister Anca in the chapel, their candles casting a warm glow upon the ancient texts spread before them. They studied the rituals of exorcism with a fervor that spoke of their unyielding commitment to the Church and the souls they were sworn to protect. Months turned into years, and the whispers grew faint, the demonic nun seemingly defeated once more. Yet, Sister Clara knew that this was but a reprieve. Under Sister Anca's gentle guidance, she honed her skills, her faith growing stronger with each passing day. The townsfolk saw the change in her, the fiery determination that had once burned within the priest and Sister Iulia now a light in her eyes. One evening, as the two nuns sat in the abbey's garden, Sister Anca spoke of the priest's final battle. Her voice was soft, her eyes distant with the weight of memory. He knew, even in the end, that the demon was never truly vanquished, only contained, biding its time. Clara listened, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead. The priest's spirit remained, ever present in the quiet moments, whispering ancient wisdom into their ears. Sister Anca had become a living legend, her story a testament to the power of faith. But Clara felt the burden of her own destiny, the unspoken understanding that one day she would stand alone against the malevolent force that had plagued the abbey for so long. As Sister Anca grew frail, Clara took over her duties, her steps firm and her gaze unwavering. The younger nuns looked up to her with a mix of awe and fear, for they knew the battles she had faced, the darkness she had conquered. The town, while peaceful, remained vigilant, the legend of the demonic nun serving as a stark reminder of the evil that lurked in the world. One fateful night, as Clara sat in quiet contemplation, she heard the whispers begin anew. The air grew thick with malice, the shadows seeming to writhe and coalesce into a living, breathing entity. The demonic nun had returned, its power undiminished by the passage of time. With trembling hands, Clara took up the sacred artifact, the weight of her duty heavy upon her shoulders. She descended into the catacombs, the echoes of her footsteps a silent prayer for the strength to come. Sister Anca, though weak in body, watched over her from the chapel, her spirit a bastion of faith that bolstered Clara's resolve. In the heart of the abbey, Clara faced the demonic nun, its eyes alight with a fury that seemed to burn the very air around her. She felt the coldness of its gaze, the malice that sought to claim her soul. Yet she did not falter. With the priest's words echoing in her mind, she began the ancient rites, her voice a beacon in the dark. The battle was fierce, the air charged with the power of their clashing wills. Clara could feel the demon feeding on her fear, her doubt. But she had been prepared for this moment, her faith forged in the fires of her mentor's wisdom. With each word, each gesture, she pushed back the darkness, her light growing brighter with each passing second. The demon's whispers grew louder, a cacophony of despair and anger that seemed to shake the very stones of the abbey. Yet Clara remained steadfast, her faith unshaken. The light grew stronger, the shadows retreating before her unyielding spirit, and as the demonic nun's form began to waver, she knew that the time had come. With a final, desperate cry, Clara thrust the artifact into the creature's heart. The light erupted, a blinding explosion that sent the demon screaming back to the abyss. The catacombs were left in silence, the air heavy with the stench of brimstone. Emerging into the chapel, Clara found Sister Anca, her eyes closed in quiet contemplation. She knew that the final battle was approaching, that her mentor's time on this earth was nearing its end. Together, they knelt in prayer, their hearts united in the face of the eternal struggle. The whispers grew fainter, the shadows less oppressive. Sister Clara knew that she would one day face the demonic nun alone, but she also knew that she was not truly alone. The priest's spirit, the legacy of Sister Iulia, and the collective strength of the abbey's nuns were with her, woven into the very fabric of the ancient stones. As Sister Anca's health declined, Clara took on the role of the abbey's guardian with solemnity. She spent her days tending to the spiritual needs of the nuns and the town, her nights in vigil and study, preparing for the inevitable. The priest's letters to the Vatican grew less frequent, the unspoken understanding that the battle was now hers to fight weighing heavily upon her. One night, as Clara sat in the chapel, the whispers grew to a crescendo. The air grew thick with the stench of decay and malice. The demonic nun had returned, more powerful than ever, its eyes fixed upon her with a hatred that seemed to burn with the fires of hell. Sister Anca, too weak to join her, offered her final blessing from her chamber, her voice a mere whisper that seemed to resonate through the very walls. Clara took a deep breath, the sacred artifact in her hand pulsing with power. She had faced the demon before, but never had it been so strong, so desperate. Yet she felt a calmness in her soul, a certainty that this was her purpose. With the priest's words echoing in her mind, she descended into the catacombs, the flaming torch in her hand casting frenzied shadows on the walls. The demonic nun awaited her, a twisted mockery of holy vestments billowing around it. Its eyes, black as the abyss, bore into Clara's very essence, seeking to break her spirit. But Clara was ready. She had been born for this moment, her life a tapestry of trials that had led her to this juncture. With a warrior's cry, she charged forward, her faith a sword that cleaved through the darkness. The battle that ensued was one for the ages, a clash of divine and demonic that shook the very foundations of the abbey. The air crackled with energy, the sacred symbols on the walls glowing with a fierce light. The demon threw all its might against Clara, its whispers a cacophony of despair and anger. Yet she stood firm, her voice never wavering as she recited the ancient incantations, her faith a shield against the malevolent onslaught. The demon raged, its power growing, feeding on Clara's fear, but she had none to give. Instead, she drew upon the wellspring of her belief, her love for the priest and Sister Iulia, her bond with the town, her duty to protect. The light grew brighter, the demon's whispers fading to a distant hiss, and then, with a final, deafening cry, Clara thrust the artifact into the demon's chest. The light exploded, consuming the creature in a blaze of holy fire. The catacombs fell silent, the air clean once more. Clara stumbled back, her robes singed, her body trembling with the aftershocks of the exorcism. Sister Anca's spirit hovered over her, a soft smile upon her ghostly visage. "Well done," she whispered. "Your faith has not only saved the abbey, but the souls of those who dwell within it." Clara looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "I am ready," she said, understanding that her mentor's time had come. The priest's spirit appeared beside them, his eyes filled with a quiet pride. "Your journey has just begun," he said. "The demon may be defeated, but the battle for souls never ends. Stand firm in your faith, and you will conquer all." Sister Clara nodded, feeling the weight of her duty settle upon her shoulders. She knew that the demonic nun would return, that evil was eternal. But she also knew that she was not alone in her struggle. The town, the abbey, and the church were with her. a bastion of light against the ever-encroaching dark. As Sister Anca's spirit faded into the ether, Clara felt a strange sense of peace. She was the Abbey's protector now, the keeper of the flame. And with the priest's guidance, she would stand firm, her faith a beacon to all who sought refuge in the face of darkness. The story of the demonic nun would live on, a warning and an inspiration for generations to come. The townsfolk gathered outside the abbey, their eyes filled with a mix of relief and dread. Clara emerged from the shadows, her face etched with the marks of battle, but her spirit unbroken. They fell to their knees, their voices raised in a hymn of thanksgiving for their deliverance. She walked among them, her hand resting gently upon their heads, offering her blessing and her strength. The following days were a blur of activity as the abbey was restored, the damage from the demon's wrath slowly repaired. Clara worked tirelessly, her hands deft and sure as she tended to the sacred spaces that had been defiled. Yet, even amidst the chaos, she found moments of quiet contemplation, her thoughts drifting to the priest and Sister Iulia, and the battles they had fought before her. But she knew that their legacy was not just one of battle and victory. It was a legacy of faith, of love, and of sacrifice. And she vowed to carry that legacy forward, to be the light that guided her sisters and the town through the darkest of nights. The priest's letters to the Vatican grew fewer, but Clara felt his presence within her, his wisdom a constant guide, as she faced the challenges of her new role. One evening, as the sun set over the town, Clara found herself in the garden, the place where she had first heard the priest's call to stand against the demonic nun. The air was still, the only sound the distant chiming of the abbey's bells. She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the earth beneath her and the gentle caress of the evening breeze. In the quiet, she heard the whispers begin anew, faint and distant, but growing stronger with each passing moment. The demon had not been destroyed, merely sent back to the shadows. The battle was never truly over, and she knew that she would face it again, but she was ready. Her eyes snapped open, the light of determination burning within them. With the priest's spirit at her side, Sister Clara stood tall, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The town of Alba Iulia slept, unaware of the eternal vigil she now kept. Yet, in the quiet of her heart, she knew that she was not alone. The priest's words echoed through her mind, a promise that together they would conquer the darkness. The abbey grew still once more, the shadows retreating to the corners as Clara took her place in the chapel, her eyes never leaving the door. The cycle continued, the eternal struggle between good and evil playing out within the ancient stones. Yet with each whisper of the demonic nun, Clara felt her faith grow stronger, her resolve unshakable. The priest's spirit remained, a silent guardian as Clara continued her work. They studied the sacred texts, preparing for the battles to come, their bond transcending the barriers of life and death. The nuns of the abbey grew in faith and strength, each one a reflection of the priest's and Sister Iulia's unyielding spirit. As the years passed, Clara's reputation grew, her name whispered with reverence among the faithful. Yet she never forgot her humble beginnings, the fear that had once consumed her. The priest had seen the warrior within her, had taught her to harness her fear into a weapon of light, and she would continue his work, her faith a sword that cut through the shadows. The whispers grew bolder with time, the demonic nun's power ever present, waiting for the moment to strike. Clara knew that the final battle was approaching, that the demon would not rest until it had claimed the souls of all within the abbey. But she was ready. The priest's and Sister Iulia's teachings had forged her into a weapon of the divine, a shield against the malevolent force that sought to destroy all she held dear. And so she waited, her heart filled with a quiet anticipation, for she knew that when the demon returned, she would not face it alone. The priest's spirit, the strength of the abbey, and the prayers of the faithful would be with her, and together they would vanquish the darkness, ensuring that the light of the abbey would never be extinguished. One fateful evening, The whispers grew to a deafening roar, and the air grew thick with malice. The demonic nun emerged from the shadows, its eyes burning with a hunger that had not been sated by time. Clara felt the coldness of its presence, but she was not afraid. She had faced this creature before, and she knew its true form, and the creature disappeared.